got the beat locked down in the chokehold. With the bass so low and the mix so sick, you can wake up face plant down in the gully, man. I'm a scummy man, beats on a running man, hard to the bargain. Hard to the bargain. Locked down in the chokehold. With the bass so low and the mix so sick, you can wake up face plant down in the gully, man. I'm a scummy man, beats on a running man, hard to the bargain, hard game, cunning plan. These bars hit hard like a train, I'ma leave you locked out cold in the rain. No pain, no gain, no same old, same old. We got the beat locked down in the chokehold.
So low when the mix so sick, you can wake up face plant down in the gully, man.
I'm a scummy man, beats on a running man, hard to the bargain.
Hard to the bargain.
Locked down in the chokehold. With the bass so low and the mix so sick, you can wake up face plant down in the gully, man. I'm a scummy man, beats on a running man, hard to the bargain, hard game, cunning plan. These bars hit hard like a train, I'ma leave you locked out cold in the rain. No pain,
water on my K-cup. Think about the time you take up. While you put on your makeup, but that makeup don't hide those lies you tell. We go round and round on this carousel. I can see the signs, baby, you can spell. Being with you is H-E-L-L. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Ain't it funny how all the games played out? Like I don't know what you're doing when you stay out. Try to lock me down, I had to break out. Cause you lie, repeat, rewind, retweet, then act like those that you see on TV. What a crying shame, with a body on that frame and a half a brain, damn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Collegiate Star League's Fall Hearthstone season. Once again, this is the round of 8. We have 2 more matches tonight, and they'll be brought to you by Blizzard and Twitch. Of course, I am Nomo Dogan, and casting with me is Lucia.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, we already saw Princeton and Georgia Institute of Technology make it out in our matches on Wednesday. They were both pretty decisive victories, 3-0. So today we have McGill versus Drexel, first of all, followed by NYU versus UNT. Now, McGill is the last Canadian school left standing, so I am definitely cheering for them today.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. I don't really have a side here that I'm gonna join up with. How about just whoever plays the most exciting and interesting decks? That's the team that I'm gonna cheer for. We'll see what happens.
That is always exciting. Now, side note, Drexel is the team that beat out the, I guess, unofficial champions of last, not season, but tournament that we had for Hearthstone. So they beat out the St. John Red Storms, the team that Phone Tap is on. So definitely an upset. You know, everyone was looking out for the Red Storms, of course. So with that, Drexel definitely a university to look out for. And maybe, hey, they did it with, you know, some interesting, surprising decks, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Phone Tap is definitely a great player, so unfortunate that their team fell, but I'm excited to see the team that took them down, you know, and see what decks they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, at this point, you know, there's not a lot of we've talked about strategy in terms of the way the format works, but what we've seen actually on Wednesday's matches is that, you know, once you know the lineup, you research the other player and you just pick the class. You know, like if your opponent plays a certain class, you just pick a class that counterpicks it. And that worked out really well. You know, they picked Warlock versus Druid, Warrior versus Paladin, Druid versus Control Warrior, and that worked out really well, you know, the 3-0s. So we'll have to see if this happens again tonight.
Yeah, I kind of hope for some longer matches, but those 3-0s definitely showed some dominance from the 2 teams that did it. Anyways, we're getting into the game here. We have Dawn representing the McGill Redmen versus Freyas representing the Drexel Dragoons. These team names are pretty stellar, I have to say.
Indeed. I seem to be having a little issue here.
Alright, well, I will just say Dawn is on Warlock and Freyas is on Shaman. Seems like it's going to be either mid-range Shaman or more of the burn Shaman that we've seen lately. And Dawn's Warlock deck appears to be mid-range, maybe Demon Warlock. So, some interesting things that I'm seeing here. A Doomhammer, a Tunnel Trog. So yeah, it seems like Freyas is playing the burn Shaman deck. He goes ahead and throws out that turn 1 Tunnel Trog.
Yes. with all these new cards coming out. It's a really interesting time, right? Sometimes you think, with a tournament, you want to sort of wait for things, for the dust to settle, so to speak, before you run a tournament. But the other thing, too, that is cool is if you do it like this, you're not just testing out a player's ability to, learn a deck really, really well and then play it out, right? It's like, hey, you need to come together as a team, figure it out. It's like, okay, we got these new cards. What are we going to do with them? What our opponent's going to do, when that adds a bit more excitement and a little bit more, something to the match.
Yeah, I agree. Seems like solid starts from both players here. Turn 1, Tunnel Trog versus a coined Dark Peddler. Dark Peddler is a super strong card. It's definitely made an impact so far on the game. It seems like a 2-of in every Warlock deck now. Unless you're playing Reno, of course, whereas you would only play it as a 1-of there.
Indeed.
But we do see Ancestral Knowledge as a possible play here. Knife Juggler also, but Knife Juggler would kind of just die off to that Peddler. Ancestral Knowledge seems pretty good to me because you get those 2 draws, of course. Even though you're overloaded next turn, you can still play the Lightning Bolt at least. Oh, he opts not to kill the Dark Peddler. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the Dark Peddler might trade with him anyway, right? Like, your Shaman, you probably want to be pushing damage, and looking at his hand, it's basically all burn spells, so at this point, it's like, you know what? I don't care if you have a giant wall of taunts. Like, I'm just pushing damage to your face.
Right. Yeah, especially with this deck, you really don't mind leaving a couple things alive on your opponent's side of the board, because when you play this many burn spells, you're mainly concerned about the face. Even though you don't have 100 hero power, all these burn cards can really add up quite fast. So, a Soulfire taken off of the second Dark Peddler.
And since Dawn only had 2 mana this turn, just throwing down that Dark Peddler, so no point just throwing your guy in. If you could Immortal Coil, that could have been an option, but instead, this is just gonna get crazier and crazier. The Tunnel Trog. I mean, finally he'll have the opportunity. Kind of an awkward hand still, I was gonna say he could play something that's 2 mana and Mortal Coil, but he only has the Imp Gang boss to go, so tapping seems way too slow, especially against the Shaman.
Yeah, and you don't want to play Flame Imp and just give him another Lightning Bolt.
So this is pretty awkward, I think.
You really want to kill off the Tunnel Trog here.
You do.
I would like to see both Peddlers trading in and then just playing the Imp Gang boss.
Yeah.
This way you can hope for something that you can play, like 2 or less mana.
Ooh, the Flame Imp will be coming down. So Dawn at a pretty risky life total at the moment.
Yeah, it's actually possible if both of these Crackles would roll 6 that just those 3 spells out of Freyas' hand could kill Dawn. I mean, that's probably not going to happen. He's going to play out these minions, of course. But that Flame Imp was definitely not what would have been optimal there for Dawn. I mean, it is a 3-2. It can kill off one of these Ridge Wolves, but man, taking 3 damage is really a pain against a burn deck.
This is a nice play, though. Obviously he gets to save both his guys, so now Dawn does have a dominant lead on the board. Yeah, no, nothing like a, Lightning Storm or an Elemental Destruction to screw that up, but one Knife Juggle will be able to land on the 4-1 instead of the 3-1, so it's a good start for Freyas. They're pretty much, I'd say, pretty even on the board at the moment.
Yeah, Knife Juggler hitting the best target there. Pretty solid. If it hit the 2-3 or the face, that would have been really bad for Freyas, but since it killed off something, puts him in an okay spot here. Implosion for 4. That is a lot of imps, and it's going to be a lot of damage coming out these next few turns, but Freyas also has a lot of damage. Wow, I think this game is going to be close. How do you play out this turn from Freyas? I mean, you want to weave the Leper Gnome in there somewhere, but then again, you might want to take a chance to get a
there's
spell damage
11 damage showing for Dawn. He needs 10 more. So let's say he goes for 2 Power Overwhelmings with 4 mana left. Does he actually have enough to kill Freyas next turn? Because if not, like, can Freyas just go face? Between everything, you know, unless Dom plays a heal bot.
Yeah, I think Freyas probably realizes his opponent. It's very unlikely that he dies next turn. So I like getting the Leper Gnome in play here and getting that damage off as soon as possible. And then if you Lava Burst, you're overloaded for 2 next turn. Wow, he didn't do anything. Wow. That's interesting. I mean, I would have liked to see at least like a Crackle. Oh my goodness, he drew the second Power Overwhelming, didn't he? That's lethal for Dawn. 2 Power Overwhelmings and a Soulfire for 12 total burn decks.
Oh,
Man,
wow.
Wow, who is the burn deck now? Dawn is asking Freyas as he Soulfires him to the face, which he got off of Dark Peddler earlier. Wow. I'm sure Freyas was not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean,
That-
technically, you know, with those Dark Peddlers, you do get enough damage. He was probably thinking, alright, you know, what are the chances he has a Dark Bomb, right? Like, you know, it's a zoo deck, so he doesn't have that much burn. You got the 2 Power Overwhelmings, and there was no way really to clear everything off, right? So it's like, alright. But, of course, you know, you can see the power of the Dark Peddler. As it enters there, you get just a little bit of unexpected something. Worst case, you know, you get a minion out, right? Like, even if you got a Voodoo Doctor, if you could do something, you know, like trade in, or if he has a bigger minion, like an Imp Gang boss, right, he can kind of get a couple extra guys out. But there's always the surprise burst, and that worked out very well. So, first game, going over to the Warlock, Dawn. Game.
McGill, yeah.
Yeah, so 1-0 there, starting things out for McGill. Yay, go Canada.
Yeah, that was intense. I mean, I was not thinking that Soulfire. I mean, I was thinking it was gonna do something at some point, right? But to just end the game like that, along with both of those Power Overwhelmings naturally drawn from his deck, or was one of them off of the other Dark Peddler? He did play 2 Dark Peddlers that game. I can't remember if he got a Soulfire off of one.
I don't know. I've been trying to sort out the technical difficulties, so...
I mean, I know he
Paying
got
as
the
much
Soulfire,
attention.
but I was trying to remember if he got a Power Overwhelming, but still, so much burst damage. Like I was saying, Freyas thought he was the burn deck. The tables turned there.
Yeah,
And,
did he have enough? Like, if the Crackles ended up the right way?
Oh yeah, he did. It would just be over a couple of turns. He didn't have all the mana to do it at once.
Okay.
But yeah.
Alright, we're just getting set up for the next game here. It will be Wenbos versus Flux. So, I mean, starting out with the Shaman deck, you know, definitely, I wouldn't say as surprising as it would be a couple weeks ago, but still definitely interesting to see that happen.
Yeah, for sure. Warlock is one of the most valuable classes now, I think. It's really strong all around, especially with Dark Peddler. So that's out of the equation now for McGill. It did its job, though. It got the win. We'll see what else they've got here, as the players are in game now.
Alright. So, it looks like we've got Wembos here for McGill playing a Warrior versus the Paladin on this side by Flux. We've seen this matchup quite a few times. Oh no, just twice, but out of 6 games last time. So it's a lot. And actually, I've got the new League of Explorers. What is it called? Table? The
board, like
the board.
Interact with.
Yes. So hopefully, I don't get too distracted and start poking around.
I think they added 2 new boards with League of Explorers.
Oh.
I still haven't figured out all of the little gadgets and stuff that they have to it, but it'll be interesting to see if you can do anything crazy. I think my personal favorite thing across all the boards is launching the rocket in the top left corner on that one Goblins versus Gnome board.
I think I did that in the very beginning when I tried it out, and then I've never been able to do it again.
I do it every time.
I'm like
Great.
streaming, and people are telling me what to do. And I'm like, I can't get the rocket to go.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to aim that laser. But it looks like mid-range Paladin is what Flux has brought here. Up against a Patron Warrior from Wenbo's, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely could be a Patron Warrior. With the Slam, Shredder is definitely... Shredder and Grom both are the classic, additions that have been added to the Patron deck, so would not be surprised.
Yep, no longer need to worry about synergy with Warsong Commander since that card was gutted. I mean, that card got the Starving Buzzard treatment, and it's kind of out of the equation for good now.
It's like worse than the Starving Buzzard treatment, right? It's a class-specific card that is worse than a neutral. Like, you cannot... It's like...
Poor Warsong Commander.
Yeah, and nobody plays Raid Leader, right? It's not even like, okay, it's a Shredder, but it's, like a 4-2 or something. It's like just straight up like, nobody plays the vanilla card, so what are you doing?
Yeah, to be fair though, she was in like 4 or 5 decks, I think, over her lifetime in her former state. She was in like 4 or 5 completely overpowered decks, which all had to be nerfed. So, and I mean, she was nerfed herself before. She used to give everything charge.
Right.
But yeah, back to the game here. We do see Frothing Berserker come down for Wenbo's. Something that's fine to do against a board with small minions like this. You don't worry too much about Frothing Berserker finishing your opponent off now because you have no way to give it charge anymore. So you're going to have to play it at some point one way or another.
Yeah. And with the coin being used up, there's no coin, shoe, silver. Ooh. The Divine Shield, unfortunately, landing on the 1/1 Recruit. So he's not going to be able to save his mini-bot. He's going to go ahead and trade that in. And the taunted up, Divine Shielded, everything. 1/1 Recruit hits face.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely like to see that Divine Shield go on the mini-bot instead, but either way, still a solid turn, I would say. It's somewhat unfortunate that you have to choose between Muster for Battle and Coghammer there. I mean, Muster would probably get killed off by a Whirlwind anyway. I'm sure Flux realizes that. But still turns out nicely that he gets to play Paladin Shredder next turn.
Yep, he gets the Shredder down. Like, the 1/1 Recruit, it's not doing much, but actually against something like Warrior, it's pretty annoying because Warrior does well at removing big guys, or like they have Whirlwind, that thing. But the Divine Shield just makes it annoying because everything they have, right? It's like, okay, I have to swing a 4 damage Deathbite onto a Divine Shield that, even though it only does 1 damage to your face, like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it is a bad feeling. I mean, that's a lot of value for Coghammer as well if a Deathbite does get used on just the Divine Shield. All right, 2/2 out of Piloted Shredder is a below average result. So a bit unfortunate.
It's a class-specific card,
Yeah, with no battle cry. So sad.
Well, you could toss out the Whirlwind and kill off the Shredder. No patrons in hand, so it's hard to say, whether you want to save stuff like that right now as opposed to just going for the clear. Could use the Deathbite to clear off the second half of the Shredder, but looks like that will not be happening.
Yeah, I think this is fine. I mean, I like saving the Whirlwind for Patron, or maybe even just for a Muster for Battle, or with your own Acolyte of Pain. Wow, a Gormok the Impaler. That's a spicy card to have in your Paladin deck. I mean, I've seen it in some Zoo decks with like Implosion and Haunted Creeper and Echoing Ooze. Lots of ways to fill up the board, but Paladin's an interesting choice for it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of works out, right? You've got the Justicar, you have Muster for Battle, so if you have one guy, you just need 7 mana for it to work. If you don't, then you need 9 mana and 2 cards, the Muster and the Gormok. But it's like, I guess Paladin's probably I almost want to say the only class that can guarantee do something like this without having, to play a whole bunch of, 1 minion guys or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, especially with just a card, you can definitely build up to this Gormok as well in the late game. Or if you really need to, you could play it as a 4/4 for 4, which, I mean, you compare it to Piloted Shredder, which is the staple 4-drop these days. And it's not that great, but if you get that battle cry off, it can be really strong, especially since it's not random. You actually get to choose where the damage goes, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. I remember the first time, everyone sort of realized that the Fist of Draxus was random, and you're like, what? Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, with that card, I guess you just gotta consider, would it be too good if you could choose? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so, but those kind of cards are pretty sketchy when you're making a card like that can be either super powerful or just end up not being used.
Yeah, I think the discard mechanic just hasn't really been fleshed out, like as a deck concept, right, for Warlock. It makes sense in terms of, it balances out a lot of things.
Yeah.
Where, obviously a Doomguard would be ridiculously overpowered if it did not discard 2 cards. But unfortunately, I think it doesn't quite work out. As far as, trying to do the discard, like the 3/2 that Warlocks have, as well as the Fist, is just not really consistent enough.
Yep. So we see Wenbo's play Acolyte of Pain along with Armor Smith, gets the Deathbite proc, plays his Whirlwind now, so he's looking for some more things to do here. I guess he's starting to feel the pressure. He doesn't want to sit around and wait for Grim Patron. He just wants to cycle some more, enable his Battle Rage, and hopefully draw into some more action, because Big Game Hunter, Grommash, those cards are somewhat situational, and Frothing Berserker is good, but you need a little bit more than that, especially against a Paladin who has this many cards in his hand. Like, he's going to be able to make some pretty strong plays here, I think. The Whirlwind being used along with the Deathbite, though, clears the way for this Muster, and it seems like Flux is realizing that. He's going to make all of these 1/1s, and now Wenbo's actually doesn't have a way to clear them.
So many guys coming out. Fortunately for Wenbo's, although he doesn't know it, his opponent does not have a Quartermaster.
He does have a Gormok, though.
He does, but he can kill off one of them, right? That's... With the Fiery War Axe, he could kill off 2.
Even if he kills one, Flux can still play a minion and then play his Gormok. Like, if Wenbo's plays as Lotheb, he might Aldor it and then he can Gormok. I mean, that wouldn't be that great because the Lotheb would be a 1/5.
He got a Cruel Task as well, so maybe he's just...
Alright,
he can go for it, yeah? He has the War Axe, so...
I mean, he definitely respects Quartermaster here. I think we can tell, since he's really stressing cleaning up these 1/1s, that he is scared of Quartermaster.
Yeah,
and
that's
I think
kind of
anyone would be.
Of course, but that's kind of an awkward side effect of, like, even though you can very effectively make guys as a Paladin, your opponent's going to be really freaked out about it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're playing against a Warlock, generally people, unless, they're afraid of Mal'Ganis, are going to be like, yeah, whatever, there's a bunch of imps around, right? Like, playing against other decks, you're not going to so aggressively clear off a bunch of 1/1s. So that's kind of an issue you see with having Gormok in a Paladin deck, is that your opponent naturally plays around it because of Quartermaster.
I mean, later in the game, if you draw a muster for battle, you can make your Gormok work. Like, you can muster, you can hero power, or play another small minion, and then you can Gormok.
Yeah, I mean, he had the option to play Justicar, or wait for the muster, but he opted to go for the immediate pressure and get the muster down after the Whirlwind. Ooh, dealt 1 damage, so maybe that Acolyte could have done something, but Wenbo's wants to put on more pressure, gonna throw down the Piloted Shredder instead.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong turn from him. Good swing there, taking out the Dr. Boom, along with 1 Boombot. This last Boombot, though, could could do some work against Wenbo's board if Flux attacks the Big Game Hunter with his weapon and then attacks it with the Boombot. He has a chance to clear off both the Big Game Hunter and the first side of the Piloted Shredder. And along with that, he could play his Justicar Trueheart and start cranking out more 1/1s. I mean, he already saw how difficult it was for his opponent to deal with the last 4 of them. So there's a good chance his opponent would have to make some risky or like expensive plays to deal with 2 more 1/1s. And plus the ability to keep doing that for the rest of the game puts a lot of pressure on the warrior.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the Justicar is for a lot of people look at it as like it's such a nice addition for warrior because they just get so much health, right? But it's actually very nice, kind of different way to clear, but it does end up getting rid of everything with Consecrate. But for Paladin, the nice thing is that it's really hard to keep dealing with 2 separate guys. You know, like all the other additions, it's like, okay, deal more damage. Like Mage, instead of dealing 1 damage, deals 2. Same with Druid. It's like, well, it doesn't really work out because you can deal 2 damage to 1 guy, but you can't kill 2 guys, right?
Right.
So it's no longer that one-on-one trade where it's like, okay, make a dude, the other guy kills the dude. Make a dude, kill a dude. It's like, well, actually, they just can't, kill both your guys, and it starts getting out of control.
Yeah, in a vacuum, the Paladin hero power by itself is already one of the top tier ones. I mean, it trades pretty evenly with like Mage, Druid, and Rogue, of course, but once you put that Justicar on it, it does seem like the most powerful hero power available. I guess besides the second form of Shadow Form, I forget what it's called, where it deals 3 damage. But making 2 1/1s at a time is really strong, like you said. It's very difficult to keep up. Wenbo's applying a strong amount of pressure here. Gormok has just been sitting here for Flux, hasn't been able to get that battle cry off yet, and I don't know if he will be able to this game. Seems like he's just got to address the board in front of him in order to survive here. I mean, that Frothing Berserker is very scary at the moment.
I'm surprised Wenbo's has kept holding on to that Justicar. Like that Gromok's not really going to be able to do much if it's just hanging out. Like it's not good stats for 4 mana, and then the Justicar is also just kind of hanging out. I suppose he could make 3 dudes next turn if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, against the old Patron, you would definitely be worried about Warsong plus Patron, but especially since we've already seen 1 Deathspite and 1 Whirlwind, I guess Flux is just opting for these other plays instead of making the 1/1s because he wants the higher immediate strength. But I think the Justicar could have paid off if it was played earlier.
Even just putting down the Justicar, right? You don't have to make guys that turn. You could just opt to get that out. Like having your Murloc Knight just come out and die really doesn't feel good.
Yeah. But we'll see where this goes. It might still pay off having that 6/3 body later. Yeah. This is really good value though for Wenbuzz because he can get this Acolyte into something that has 1 attack, which feels so good when you have your Acolyte in play and it only takes 1 damage and it draws a card. Any Acolyte that draws 2 or more cards is pretty good value. A 3-card Acolyte obviously is great, but 2 cards is pretty good.
Wenbuzz is aware that his health is dipping pretty low, so gonna go ahead and armor up a little.
Yeah. I mean, Paladin, not a bursty class these days. Sometimes you'll see like Blessing of Kings plus True Silver Champion, but over a couple turns, it's nice to be able to armor up a bit, just to make sure you're out of range for any shenanigans that the Paladin might have. Tough
Those are
turn, though,
expensive. Yeah, I mean, you look at that, right? You get the 4 damage from True Silver plus 4 from Blessing of Kings compared to what we saw in last game, which is Warlock 3 mana. That's 12 damage. You're like, okay, not quite the same. Paladin doesn't have that kind of low mana burst. Now, that Quartermaster just makes me even more upset. Like this Justicar Trueheart is just sitting there doing nothing, and if he had gotten it down earlier, this turn, you get Quartermaster down on 2 guaranteed recruits, and that would have been amazing.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if it would have saved him, though. I mean, Grommash here with double Inner Rage. This is 19 total damage coming from Wenbos, so that's a lot of burst, even though you don't have Warsong plus charge minions anymore. Grommash takes care of the bursty part of the patron. I think Wenbos sees it here, just making completely sure that he has the damage. And,
Although, he needed the damage from Lothep, though, so, if he had maybe a couple extra guys out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just playing a little bit too much around the patron, which we never saw show up, right? So maybe that kind of prevented Flex. He was just a little too freaked out about making too many guys. And instead, he just sort of, through that, let Wenbos take control of the game.
I think it's also a pretty rough matchup, too. I mean, it used to be even worse when Warsong Commander was a big deal.
Yeah.
Or was a playable card, but it's still pretty bad. So maybe he was a bit demoralized by seeing that matchup at the start as well, and who knows what other factors went into it. But that is another win for McGill. Wenbos takes it. That moves them up to 2-0. And man, are we going to see a repeat of last week with some more 3-0s? Teams just really, really showing their dominance by taking these series 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, it shows, right? It's sort of like in the early season, you see people just sort of playing based on their own skill, right? It's like, play a deck you're familiar with, and at that point, the meta wasn't really changing, so you had the few decks that you were very familiar with, you just go in with it, and, whatever happens, right? But at this point, it's really more about, really researching your opponent, seeing what they play, trying to mind game and play around that. It's not so intense, I would say, right? Because it is still collegiate Star League. These players do have other things to do, namely go to school. So, and I think you get your winnings in scholarship too, right? So it's not even like, hey, if I do this, it's like, well, if you get your scholarship but you failed out of school, then you don't actually get the money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. So these players do have other things to do, so they can't just focus on playing all the time. So it kind of effectively works out where if you play just to counteract your opponent's, what you expect your opponent to play, that works out very well, right? Because you don't expect your opponent to kind of mind game and try to play the deck that, like you all rock, paper, scissors, level up each other too many times, because it's like, guys, we do have other things to do. Like, we're not going to sit here and learn 5 other decks to do this with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of these players probably specialize in like 1 or 2 classes, maybe a few more depending on how long they've played a game and stuff like that. But like you said, there's a lot of other things that these guys got to focus on. But definitely interesting to see their play and their decks that they brought. So we are getting into the next game. It's going to be Morkt. I think that's an okay way to pronounce it. Morkt versus Apollonios, kind of like Apollo Neos.
I'd say it's Apollonios, right? Because there's 2 P's as opposed to 2 L's.
Wait, you mean 2 L's?
Oh, I see. Wait, did I misspell that, or was it different in the lineup?
Oh no, I just think of
okay, I think I just
Apollo.
Yeah, I just misspelled it in the lineup, so I confused myself on that. Let's
Understandable.
go ahead and fix that.
But it looks like Morkt is playing a mid-range druid based on what I see in his hand right now, and Apollonios playing Reno Warlock, I believe, because I see a Stalag as well as a Spellbreaker, both pretty common cards in Reno Lock these days.
Alright, so we'll see if this is the game, for Drexel to come back. As we've said, Warlock's sort of a very good deck at the moment. It's still not quite stable yet. Everyone's kind of experimenting with it, but we've seen very good results, so maybe this is the deck to pull Drexel back in the game. Or, McGill's just gonna have Druid do Druid things, get combo, and kill off. Apollonius?
We
Because
could
it's
just
like,
call him Apollo.
yeah, Apollo, right? You want to put the emphasis on the O, but then you tag this extra thing at the end, and you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah. So, I think this matchup really depends on the Druid's start. I mean, you have Reno in your deck, right? But you have to draw it to get out of combo range later on and stuff
Right.
like that. But I think it does favor Druid depending on what happens in the early game. And we do see he has a wild growth, which is nice, but his hand doesn't look very impressive right
Yeah.
now.
It's like step 1, draw wild growth. All
Yeah.
right, next.
And I mean, innervate is nice, but you don't really have anything to innervate right now. Like, you can shade here. You're probably not going to be playing Savage Roar for a while, and Swipe isn't exactly a proactive card. That's a reactive card. Like, and as Druid, you want to be really proactive. So I would say this is somewhat of an unfortunate hand for Morkt as of right now. He's going to need some solid draws to kick it into gear for these next few turns.
Yep, I'm liking Apollo's hand here. You know, as a warlock, especially as a handlock, you don't really need to be so aggressive and get minions down, right? So he's just hanging out for now. He's got Sun Fury, he's got a heal bot, he's got Sludge. You know, he's got plenty of ways to sort of, you know, build a wall around himself. So he's happy to just keep drawing, get the Zombie Chow out, and as we see, he does have the combo, the Fergan, and
Yeah, Fugan and Stalag.
yeah.
To summon Thaddeus, which we haven't seen a Thaddeus yet here on CSL. That
We
would be an
have
exciting
not.
first.
Yeah, we saw the combo come out last week, but the second half unfortunately was silenced. So
Yeah. Zombie Chow in play on turn 3 is not very impressive, but it's something to empty out Apollo's hand a little bit, because it does start to get clogged up after a couple of taps. He wants to make sure to keep his hand size manageable so that he doesn't burn off any cards, especially when he has the coin in hand as well.
worked.
Yeah, it seems like just a piloted Shredder turn here for Morkt.
Yeah. You can't really toss away a BGH when you're playing against a handlock, so no tempo BGHs. Doesn't really do much either. You get an extra damage on his face and an armor. Like, you just play a Shredder here. Oh, that Hellfire though.
Yeah, Hellfire is an opportunity to kill off the Shade. At the cost of your Zombie Chow and leaving something from the Shredder on board, it might just be worth it though.
It looks nice. Yeah, I mean,
How often do you get a chance to kill off a Shade of Naxxramas? Like, this deck usually doesn't play Shadow Flame either, Reno Lock, so that's probably the last chance to kill it while it's still stealth.
would have been nice if he had the Mortal Coil just to get the coin Mortal Coil in. It's
Yeah.
rare that you get something with 1 health, but
Yep, Druid of the Saber is definitely a below average.
yeah,
roll
we said
off of
2-2 was
confidence.
below average. It's like, okay, well, this one
Yeah.
is 2-1. It gets worse.
Azure Drake is a solid draw, though. I'd say keep on cycling. Ooh, Kezin Mystic, not what you want to see in this matchup. From a good draw straight into a bad one. I think Morkt really needs an Ancient of Lore next turn to pick up the pace a little bit.
Definitely. It would have been nicer, of course, if it's like he's 1 mana behind each turn, right? It's like, okay, you played a Wild Growth, but then you basically didn't use it, you know? He played a Shade with 4 mana, and then a Shredder with 5, and then the Azure
Yeah.
Drake with 6, so it's like, you could have hero powered on turn 2, and he'd be, you know, you'd have 1 extra armor, and he'd be 1 damage down. That's sort of what's happened so far.
Yeah, but hopefully he does draw a 7 drop, whether it's Dr. Boom or Ancient of Lore. One of those would be really nice to have right about now. On the other hand, Apollo has a ton of options here, and he's just really deciding what's the best. Actually, looking back at Morkt's hand, the best draw here would probably be Force of Nature, because that would be lethal. Druid of the Claw, I don't think is lethal. I mean, you've got Druid of the Claw, Charge Form, Innervate Savage Roar. Savage Roar would be 8. plus 10, so 18, I believe. Because there's 4 things that would get the plus 2, so that's 8 off the roar, and then Druid is 4, Drake is 4, 2 from the Saber, so that's 8 plus 10 is 18.
The swipe won't be enough either, unfortunately.
He could start setting up for lethal, though. I mean, you definitely want to respect the heals that Reno Lock plays, but you could, yeah, you put the Druid of the Claw in taunt form, you could just kind of play it off like you're not setting up for lethal, even though a Druid with 5 cards when, you know, he hasn't really been playing anything super impressive, you gotta guess that he probably has Savage Roar, Swipe, those kind of cards in his hand right now.
Exactly.
Like, it's probably inferred from what Apollo has seen.
Oh, and Twisting Nether.
Yeah, Twisting Nether, another popular choice in these decks. Because, you know, you can only play one of everything and you want to have a good amount of board clears. It also works nicely with Fugan, Stalag, and the other Death Rattle minions, because hopefully you kill your opponent's whole board and then you get back either like an 11/11 monster or whatever else your Death Rattles might put into play.
Apollo not in... Well, I was gonna say he's not in a crazy amount of danger, but actually it's hard for him to clear off this 4/6. So
and he has got to be thinking about, man, what is this Druid holding? Like, he's got to be feeling kind of scared right now. 17, I would say, is a pretty fragile, like, oh man, there's the Force of Nature.
Yes, in fact, it is very fragile because of this.
Innervate Savage Roar, or Innervate Force of Nature Savage Roar is in fact lethal.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, Apollo, he had a lot of options in one way. Like, I would have said, if you play the heal bot plus Sun Fury, that might have been the safest thing to do, because, you know, although we always say, like, you know, you can't just play to not lose, right? You can't just assume your opponent has Innervate Savage Roar in hand, but it's like, he hasn't played all those cards. You assume one's a BGH, one's a swipe, and then it's like he, you know, he still has all these cards that he's been holding on forever. And unfortunately, not picking up the Reno himself, you know, I think he had to taunt up there at least.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like, there's, you can't really expect the combo, but I don't know, like, with the way the Druid was playing, it was kind of sketchy. You might have wanted to do something defensive, but then again, Healbot in a Sun Fury does seem like a really weird thing to do that turn, even though...
But you had a 4/7, right? So, you know, like, that's a huge amount of health to get through. You can't just throw one guy at it. You had a 4/4, a 2/1, and a 4/6. So it would take at least, you know, face plus one of those guys to run into it, and then something else runs into the heal bot, and then at that point he can go to your face.
Yeah.
And as Warlock, all you have to do there is you just have to wait it out. Like, once you get Reno, you're back to full health. Like, you can party all you want. Like, we saw the opposite of this in our Wednesday match, which is just, you know, once the Warlock just sat back and healed up to 30, there was just not enough damage coming out of the Druid.
Right. Yeah, and I would say it's somewhat unfortunate as well. I mean, usually you start to respect the combo a lot at actual turn 9, but with Innervate you can make it happen on turn 8 or even turn 7, but as we saw, turn 8, and that took the series for McGill. So 3-0 again. I wonder if this streak, or I wonder how long this streak is going to keep up. I mean, 3 3-0s in a row this week. We've got one more match tonight in the round of 8 to see who else makes it to the top 4, and that's going to be between the New York University Violet Teachers and the University of North Texas Eagles. So it should be another great match, maybe a little closer than this one. I mean, this one was pretty dominant 3-0 like we mentioned, but yeah, I hope you guys stay tuned for that. Lucia, anything else?
No, we're just going to take a quick break, and when we are back, our last round of 8 match for Hearthstone.